Вот это и был он сам. Смеешься, наверное? Морковь. Морковь. Вечеринка, новости. У-у-у.
Здравствуйте, в эфире новости Удмуртии, в студии Марины Симоновой. Смотрите в этом выпуске. Приоритеты определены. Глава Удмуртии представил ежегодный доклад о положении дел в республике. Вакцинация от ковид вошла в национальный прививочный календарь. И новые лица в зале и на сцене. Как прожил этот год театр «Молодой человек», расскажем. Республика намерена вновь выйти с предложением о перераспределении средств в пользу регионов. Об этом депутаты Госсовета сообщили сразу же после выступления главы. Александр Бричалов представил ежегодный доклад о положении дел в республике. Основные тезисы репортажа Альбины Валерьевны.
Свой доклад Александр Бричалов начинает с цифр. В бюджеты всех уровней республики с начала года поступило 268 миллиардов рублей. Из них 75% перечислили в федеральный.
Столь значительный рост отчислений в федеральный бюджет в первую очередь объясняется ростом двух базовых налогов – НДС и НДПИ. Но мы видим рост и по другим источникам, таким как налог на прибыль, налог на доходы физических лиц, доходы от малого и среднего бизнеса.
Всего доходная часть бюджета республики в итоге в следующем году составит 72,5 миллиарда рублей. Это на 9 миллиардов выше уровня 2019 -го. Существенную часть этих средств.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Piano TV. So today we are going to go on a musical journey. We are going to take a look at the piano trio number 2 in E-flat major by Schubert. And it's an epic journey. It's a 45-minute long piece. It has 4 movements, and there's a lot to talk about. So this trio was written for the piano, the violin, and the cello in late 1827. And for those of you who remember in our brief history of Schubert, which you should check out if you haven't, he died a year later in 1828 at age 31. So this is one of the last full-length compositions that he ever wrote. So what we're going to do in today's video is talk about this piano trio as a whole. Then we're going to dive into specifics into each movement and listen to audio clips of specific parts that I think you should hear. And as always, I like to avoid a lot of musical jargon, so this should be an okay video for you to watch if you're like a little lower on the musical nerd totem pole. Anyway, let's get started. This trio is right up there with other masterpieces such as Beethoven's Archduke Trio. And I'd actually consider them both to be, if I was to make like a top 5 trios of all time, these would both be on it. Not only is it a massive work at 45 minutes long, but it's also relentlessly transforming. Schubert gives us this roller coaster of constantly evolving ideas and emotions, so much to the extent that every moment of this trio, there's not a dull moment, like every moment sparkles with brilliance. Schubert wrote it in just a few short weeks, and he wrote it for one of his friend's engagement parties. It was performed in January 1828 at this private engagement party, but later he actually got to hear a performance of it not only at this private party, but also at a public March 1828 performance in Vienna. The concert was a huge success. Schubert had a sudden windfall, and he was able to pay off some debts. Schumann, who was fond of Schubert, wrote, "A trio by Schubert passed across the musical world like some angry comet in the sky," which I think is meant to be flattering. And then he also described this work as spirited, masculine, and dramatic. Schubert only wrote 2 trios in his lifetime. The first one in B-flat major is good. It's worth a listen. It's much more emotionally stable than the second one, which is the one we're talking about today. I find it interesting because from a timeline perspective, they were written only several weeks apart, but they're completely different characters. I mean, take a listen, you'll see what I mean. The second piano trio in general is much more famous, especially the main theme of the second movement. And Schubert himself said he preferred it of the 2, so that's good enough for me. This trio has 4 movements in it. We're going to take a brief look at each movement and just listen to what they sound like. Since it's such a huge piece, we're only going to be able to skim the surface of it in today's video, so as always, I highly encourage you to listen to the full version. If you hop on over to pianotv.net, which is the website that accompanies this YouTube channel, I'll have the blog post linked in the comments below if you want to go to that, but you can find references to my favorite recordings and videos of it. The opening first Allegro movement was written in sonata form, which we've detailed in another video. I'll link to it in the associated blog post. It was a really common song form in the classical era, and it was also a pretty complex song form. So what we're going to do first is we're going to listen to the first 30 seconds or so of the intro, and then we're going to talk about it more in depth once you have it in your head.
You got a sushi.
Schubert, being the little rule breaker that he was, did a couple crazy things with this first movement. So one of them is the first movement arguably has up as many as 6 musical themes. So just to give you a sense of that, generally 2 themes were typical. A theme is just a recurring idea in a song. So that's a lot of themes. Another super crazy thing that he did is he modulates, which means changes keys, from E flat major to B minor, and that is the those keys are not related at all. B has sharps, E has flats, and they don't normally, it's super rare for a composer to do that different of a modulation. I want to show you just quickly, let's take a quick listen to this specific key change so you can hear how seamlessly it's executed. It doesn't sound jarring to the ears at all, although by all accounts it should. This is a really good example of Schubert's fluid and masterful songwriting style. This opening movement is great. It has all the energy and melodic flow that you'd expect from Schubert. His writing, I find, has a unique pureness, which makes it actually really easy to ignore all of the hidden complexities within it. He has this ability to string together different ideas so organically that they just kind of pass by almost unnoticed. When you're listening, instead of noticing big changes and super different parts, you really just notice a feeling and a sense of flow. Like going along that, and just to give you an image, I guess, listening to Schubert feels like being carried on the wind. Like you're breezing along amiably, and there's a multitude of ideas that are just passing you by. But instead of trying to grasp at ideas and fit them into like a definitive box with a label, it feels much nicer to simply float along and enjoy. So even if you don't think you know this piano trio, and you probably never heard the first movement, you might have heard the opening of this second movement, Andante con moto, which is walking speed with motion. This is a really famous tune in pop culture. It's notably used in Stanley Kubrick's 1975 movie Barry Lyndon, among many others. So let's take a quick listen to it first. You really get the feeling of a funeral march or procession from the introduction. The melody, of course, is really beautiful, just what you'd expect from Schubert. And it starts off with the cello, which you can kind of see the cello line right in here. There's the melody, which is then later imitated by the piano. And this theme is carried through the entire second movement. And it also starts off pretty reserved, and you heard that in the recording, I'm sure. Schubert, he does this deliberately so that the upcoming exuberant loud section just crashes and hits us all the harder for it. You can see this fortissimo and epic piano part. And this part occurs a couple times. It's this loud climactic moment. And it doesn't last very long. It's very exuberant. And as soon as it fades away, the funeral march that returns feels even weightier and even sadder. So I want to take a listen to this first climactic part so that you can get a sense of it, and you can hear how it almost oscillates between elation and despair. So where the second movement is heady and dramatic, the third movement, which is a scherzando, is playful and it's light. This movement is written in ternary form, which is ABA form. It basically means there's like three parts. So an A part that's very similar, and then a B part that's a little bit of a different section. Now the fun thing about this is that it's a canon. We've talked about canons on this channel before. It's a song form that's based on imitation. If you're not sure about that, you can always go and find those old videos, which again I'll put up on the blog post. So what you can see is the piano here is introducing a little tune, and then the violin and cello are copying that tune. So the piano's the leader, the violin is the follower. So we're going to take a listen to a moment of this and see if you can hear the canon. It's very nice. The finale of this trio, which is Allegro Moderato, medium fast, is very complex, and it shifts through a lot of mood. And it also doesn't even have a clear song form. It's kind of somewhere between a sonata and a rondo. But Schubert wasn't interested in maintaining specific order. So this opening theme, which we're going to listen to in just a moment, is very bright and vivid. But then suddenly, we're not going to play this part, but you can hear it if you do the whole thing. Suddenly, it just instantly shifts to a darker second theme with no transition, which is what makes it a little bit more like a rondo and a little bit less like a sonata. Weirdly enough, and we'll talk about this in a minute here, but halfway through the song, after the second theme is over, we arrive at the melody from the second movement. So Schubert's doing like a giant return. It's really cool. But anyway, let's take a listen to this first opening joyful part. In addition to weaving in themes from the other movement, which is right here, we'll talk about that, he is also simultaneously coming up with at least 3 brand new themes and melodies that are introduced in this finale. So he's just like a crazy musical idea generator guy. But anyway, this is our return to the march theme for movement 2. We're going to take a listen to how he reintroduces this, because he works it into the new tempo and the new key that this is in, as opposed to movement 2, where it's very slow and heavy. It's a lot faster in this part, and the cello is carrying the melody while the piano is quite a bit different. It's really cool. In this trio, you can hear Schubert as a descendant of classical guys like Haydn and Mozart, but you can also hear him as a precursor to romantic composers like Schumann and Brahms. So one really amazing thing about Schubert, and something that you can hear in this trio, is that he never does the same thing twice. Like, even if he's repeating melodies and parts, he always puts like a different spin on them and changes them up. So it ends up feeling like a straight line when you're listening as opposed to a circle. Whereas other composers will kind of like spin you around the same parts in a loop. Schubert takes you on a journey that's constantly moving forward, and I think it's really cool. Anyway, that is all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up. I really appreciate that. Leave any comments with requests if you have any, and subscribe if you have not done so yet. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you next time. But Schubert wasn't interested in, oh, I almost dropped my thing.
Это нейрогаджет Brainstorm. С его помощью более...
И последние 4 цифры номера, с которого поступил звонок.
Развивая концентрацию, память и внимание. Brainstorm — это запатентованная разработка, использующая технологию TDCS, которая позволяет нейронам быстрее передавать нервные импульсы и помогает...
Используйте ваш одноразовый код. Ваш код 4407.
В день достаточно, чтобы получить результат уже через неделю. Заказывайте нейрогаджет Brainstorm на официальном сайте mybrainstorm.ru. Уходи. Пока вы не посмотрите фильм. Дамы и господа, это чудо. Нет больше слов, чтобы описать события, произошедшие в Москве страшной зимой 1941 года. Когда непобедимые нацисты были не только остановлены, их заставили отступить уставшие и израненные русские. И все это было чудесным образом запечатлено на камеру. В документальном фильме «Разгром немецких войск под Москвой». Я нашел первого номинанта.
Нацисты не остановятся, победив Европу. Они придут к нам.
Оставлять вас в Москве опасно. Немцы в 30 километрах. Возможно, линия фронта пройдет по улицам Москвы. Все студенты подлежат обязательной эвакуации. И Оскар за лучший документальный фильм получает... Разгром немецких войск под Москвой. Мы можем узнать правду собственными глазами.
This video is a live mock grade 5 exam given to Angel, one of my Skype students, with no editing out mistakes or retakes, in order to mirror as closely as possible the experience of a real exam.
Music Online UK.
Scales. So first of all, can we start off with a B major scale? Thank you. And a B flat minor scale.
Ваш код. 5, 3, 5, 8.
And a C sharp minor contra motion. A chromatic scale starting on D.